Hello and welcome back to another chainmail tutorial. This video and this kit are brought to you in collaboration with myself, Lauren Does Cosplay, and the Ring Lord. On the Ring Lord's website, you can find both versions of this kit that I'll be talking about today, as well as some other kits that I've made with them in the past, such as this scale mail pauldron, ooh, or this chainmail purse. But today I will be talking about these, which I am affectionately calling the hip kit, which my whole intention of making this piece was for it to be worn in several different ways. So when you make something that's multi-purpose, it becomes a little bit harder to name it. But for now, we are calling it the hip kit. Right now I am wearing the all chain version and I am wearing it on my hips, which is one way to wear it. But another way to wear it is front and back. And you've got sort of this like loincloth situation, which maybe looks silly just on a dress like this, but it's a great layering piece. I think this piece all around is fantastic for layering with armor, for a LARP kit, to the Ren Fair, wherever you're wearing your chainmail. I think this is a great piece that goes with a lot of different looks. So this is the same base chain piece, but as you can see, it doesn't go all the way down to that point. It's sort of squared off in the front or back. So the kit will come with all of the materials you need to take it all the way down to the full length. But this is just an option. You know, if you wanted to stop at a certain point, you could get this sort of squared off look. And it's not a huge difference, but you know, it just adds a little bit of variation to this piece. The second version of this kit that will be available is in scale mail. The same concept, similar design, but in scale mail instead of fully chainmail. Again, same concept with this one. It can be worn front or on the sides. This tutorial will be in two different sections, one for the fully scale mail piece and one for the all chain piece. Now we've got the main two ways you can wear it, right? You can wear it on your hips, you can wear it front and back, but hear me out. Okay, same piece, no alterations, worn on the shoulders, makes kind of a very dramatic, very sleigh shoulder capelet moment. Now I know wearing it here takes the hip out of the hip kit, but like I said, I really wanted to make a very versatile piece. So if you ask me, you're getting 3 ways to wear something for the price of 1. Am I wrong? Without further ado, I will jump right into the tutorial. So thank you so much for supporting myself, for supporting the Ring Lord, and I hope you love your kit. To get started, we are going to go over the all chain piece. This kit will include all of the rings you need for this piece, as well as 2 O-rings and 1 clasp. This is quite a beginner-friendly piece. I would highly recommend, if you have never made any chainmail before, I would recommend checking out my beginner chainmail tutorial, because I am going to jump into this one assuming that you know sort of the basics of construction. As with any of my projects, I start out by doing all of my ring prep, so I have already made a ton of 4-in-1s, and I also have a huge handful of open rings. We are going to start with the belt portion of this kit, which in this case is just sort of a straight row of 4-in-1s built to your measurements. In my case, I have a 29-inch waist, which ends up being about 15 4-in-1s on each side, plus the O-ring anchoring on each point. If you need fewer rings or more rings, that's all just dependent on your own sizing, so just make it to what fits you. I'm going to go ahead and make the first side of the belt. Now that we have 1 straight row of 4-in-1s, this is just half of the belt, so I'm going to do this exact same thing one more time. You should now have 2 equal lengths that will come together to create your belt. Just for now, I'm going to put this one aside and I'm going to just work with 1, and I'm going to attach the O-rings to the belt. To do that, I'm just going to take these last 2 rings at the end of this strip, and I'm going to make sure they're running in the same direction. I'm going to open both of these and then put this O-ring inside of them. Open this up, pop the ring in there, and then open up the other side, just making sure that they're running parallel to each other. You don't want them to get all turned around. Ring in this one. Now your O-ring is attached. If you feel like this is sort of like a weak point, like everything is hanging on just this one ring, you can double up this ring, which is something I do sometimes. I'll just follow the same path as this ring and just kind of double that up right there, just to give the belt a little bit more security. So you can see now there's 2 rings laying in the same spot. Adds a little bit of durability there. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. So now you have this strip with your O-rings on either side. We're going to move this over, and then we're going to attach this piece to just one of the O-rings, just making one long continuous strip. So we're gonna do the same thing that we did on those other sides. And then on this side, this is where we are going to attach our clasp. This one's an easy one. It's just a little lobster claw that you can open there. And again, take these 2 rings here and clamp those 2 rings onto it, like that. You got our clasp side, and then I'm actually gonna go all the way over to the other end one more time. I'm gonna connect 2 open rings onto the end of this. All right, and with that, the belt is done. You've got 2 rings hanging off the end of this O-ring, 1/2, your other O-ring, the other half, and then your clasp at the very end. And for now, we are going to set the belt aside and we're going to start working on the main body of the piece. There will be 2 different styles that you can make of this piece if you want it to be like this sort of squared off blocky piece. We're going to start with that version, but you could also extend it down into the point, and so we will cover both ways of how to make that. Starting as the squared off one as our base, we're working in 8 rows of 4-in-1s, a row of 21, a row of 21, a row of 21, another row of 21, a row of 18, a row of 15, a row of 12, and a row of 9. And for clarity, when I'm talking about like a row of a certain amount of 4-in-1s, I'm talking about this is 1 4-in-1. So if I'm saying a row of 8 4-in-1s, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 4-in-1s, and then all of those get connected. So I'm not like talking about the connector pieces. I'm talking about 8 groups of 4-in-1s and connecting those all in a row. So this is 21, you know, and going down. So that's just what I mean by like a row of 21 4-in-1s. I did the exact same thing that I did with the belt. So I've already constructed my rows just for, you know, the ease of making this all in one go. So I have all of my 4-in-1 rows. And so now we're just going to go about connecting all of them. So I'll do like this first chunk of 4. These are all the lengths of 21 4-in-1. So I'll connect all of these and then we'll go to the next step. All right, now you have this big chunk of 4 rows of 21. So now we're going to move on to the next length of chain that we're going to attach to that. This is the row of 18. Instead of lining it up right to the edge of where this is, we're gonna bring it in a little bit. So we're gonna sort of start making this like stair pattern. To attach this one, we're gonna go 1.5 4-in-1s in. Let me bring in. So there's a full 4-in-1, half of a 4-in-1, and then this next one, this is where we're gonna start our connecting point. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th ring is where we're lining up the top of it. So you're going in there, 1, 2, 3, 4th ring down, and then carry that into that set of 4-in-1s. So that's where this next row is gonna start, and we're gonna carry it all the way down. Just finished connecting our row of 18, and you can see getting down to the end here, we have that same sort of equidistant step in. So we've got the 1, 2, 3 connected on the 4th ring. So that's on this side and on this side. And we're gonna do that exact same thing with our next row of 15. I'm gonna do the same amount of rings in. That's 1.5 4-in-1s, or down to this 1, 2, 3, 4th ring. You can really see how drastic these steps are, but we will go in and sort of smooth that out in a little bit. But for now, connecting another row. Okay, we are getting there. Going to move on to our next row, do the exact same thing. This is our row of 12. Down to the 4th ring. You're getting it at this point, I think. Finally, our row of 9. You know the drill at this point. Connect the row of 9. I never pressed play. But we are just finishing up, touching this final row. Okay, if you were making the squared off version, hooray! You're pretty much almost done with this piece. Now we're gonna go in and we're going to eliminate some of this like crazy stair step look, and we're gonna make this little bit more smoothed out. On each of these steps, there's a ring that's like on the furthest most edge here. Every row has this ring. It's only connected to one other ring. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this ring off of the very edge. Take it off there. And we're actually gonna use it. We're gonna use the same ring and we're going to insert it into this 90-degree angle that the steps are creating. So like, imagine you're going to connect it just like it's, you know, a normal 4-in-1 weave. So sort of like pretending there's one there. There isn't though. So you're gonna go in through the bottom here and just sort of like round out that edge. So you can already see it's a lot smoother there instead of the like, Let me show you that again. Down to our next step. We're gonna take off this edge ring, take that off, and inserting it down into the next 90-degree angle. Going down into that. Your imaginary one would be here, and then just going back up through these two. And it just kind of gives it a little bit of a softer edge on the sides. And then to finish off this side, we're going to take off this last edge ring. There you go. Side is now done. There's still like a little bit of, you know, it's not like a totally smooth gradient, but that's how this side should look versus how our other side looks. Just still very hard 90-degree steps. So we're going to go in. We're going to do the exact same thing on this side. We're going to take it off, put it somewhere else. So on this side, your hypothetical final ring would be there, but it's not there. So we're just gonna start into this like we would if that ring was there. And last one on this bottom row, take that ring off. Okay, if you are just doing this version, you're done with this main piece and all that's left is to attach it to the belt. But if you would like to continue it down into a point, I'll show you how to do that here. Maybe, you know, it's the same process. It's just doing all the extra rows, but instead of going, you know, a 4.5 in, it's gonna be a little bit different. You're carrying it down into the point. We're gonna start just based off of this last row. So if you count our 4-in-1s that we have now after taking those 2 off the end, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 4-in-1s on this bottom row. Went ahead and created a row of 7 4-in-1s. We're gonna line this one up underneath it. This one we're just going half. So, you know, if this is our first 4-in-1, we're starting right here. So just one, the second one is what we're lining it up with. Put them here. So we're not going all the way to the top, we're going 1 in. It's gonna look like that. I'm gonna close this all the way down. All right, with that row on, you can see we've sort of got another like harsh angle situation. So similar to how we created that slope on the top half of this, you're gonna take this bottom ring, this one that sort of feels like it's sticking out all wonky. Take this one, take it off. Now you're gonna bring it up and fill in this little 90-degree angle. And that's what creates that sort of smooth triangular gradient. Like that. So you can see that's a nice sharp line there. We're gonna go do it on the bottom here. This bottom part, we're gonna take off this very bottom ring. Take that off. Insert that ring into this little 90-degree and continuing the 4-in-1 pattern like you would. Close it up. And then now you got this nice sharp line here as well. And you're going to continue this all the way down into your point. So we just did that row of 7. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're gonna create a row of 5 and attach that the same way. We've got our next row of 5, and that's gonna connect just 1 half step in. So we're not lining it up with the very edge. We're going 1 half step in, and that's where you're gonna start your connection. And connect this row all the way down. With our row of 5 attached, we're gonna go in again, take off our very bottom corner pieces, fill in that 90-degree. All right, now we're counting our bottom row again. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 4-in-1s. So our next row will have 3. Same alignment, just half step in. Since we're right here at the very tip, it's a little bit easier just to work in single rings. So instead of attaching another 4-in-1 and trying to fiddle with that, we're just going to kind of do it the manual route. So we're going to go in on the edge. We're going to take an open ring. We're going to go through these 2 rings. Close that up. So we just went through 1, 2. Now we're going to go through 2, 3. This is 2 and 3. One more ring. This one is going to go through 3, 4. 3, 4. Because that last row had 1, 2, 3, 4 rings. Now we did 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to go 2 and then 1, and then it will be done. So now we're going to go through 1, 2, through 2 and 3. Last one, going through both final rings. And you've got a beautiful, stunning gradient triangle at the bottom. So zooming all the way out, you can see the difference between the piece that gets squared off at the bottom, this one, and the one that goes all the way to the point. So all of the kits will come with enough to make this on both sides if that's what you want. The whole point of these is to be incredibly versatile. So if you like this look, you can just stop here. But if you want to go all the way down, you can absolutely do that. All we have left to do is to attach these to the belt. What we're gonna do next is identify the midpoint of the belt and the midpoint of the entire piece. I'm gonna do that just with, I'm gonna count in, mark my middle point. It's gonna be different for both of us because we are different sizes. So just find the exact middle of both of your pieces. All right, I've got my middle point identified on both pieces. And you can see that the main body of it is a lot wider than the actual belt is. And this is because we're going to be looping a full 4-in-1, like the top 2 pieces of a 4-in-1. And that alone is going to go into 1 ring on the top here. These are my midpoints. You can see I've got 2 rings connected to 1 ring on the belt here. And we're gonna do that the whole way up. And this is gonna create a very gathered look. Instead of it just being like very wide around your torso, it's going to force all of this mail to be very scrunched and make it look a lot more dense looking. Let's continue. Got this one. So we're not skipping any. We're just going to go into the next 2. So we've got this 4-in-1 locked down, right? So you're gonna go into the next 2, and those are going to go into this next individual ring. Okay. So it creates a little bit of space here, but it ends up gathering it along the length. We're gonna go down to our next 4-in-1 top. Right, and we're going to put it into this next individual ring on the belt. We're going to continue that on both sides. We've got one side of the belt and the piece attached. You can see just how dense it makes it hang vertically. Is one side complete, and you can sort of see those gaps here because you're connecting 2 to 1. That's okay, that's how it should look. Connect the other side, and then this piece will be done. And with that, both sides of your hip piece are finished, and you can now wear it merrily about. Okay, this is the official start to the scale version of this kit. So this is what a finished panel will look like. And in this kit, you will have the amount of rings required for this project, correct amount of scales required for this project, 2 O-rings, and 1 clasp. I mentioned this in the chainmail version, but I am going to be covering this project already assuming that you know how to make scale mail. If not, I do have a beginner tutorial on my YouTube channel so that you can get the basics, because I'm just going to be speaking in terms that I'm assuming we all already know. I'm going to go ahead and get started on the tutorial for this kit. The first thing we're going to want to do is make the belt portions. You can see on here we're just doing a straight run of 4-in-1s. As I said, on the chain version, it's going to differ depending on the size of your waist. So I am going to make mine the size of my waist. And for me, that's about 19 4-in-1s across. And then there will be the extra width with the 4-in-1s on the side. So this one is totally dependent on your sizing. As always, I do all of my ring prep beforehand. So I have all of these already open rings ready to go when we get to the scale portion, but I have already made my 4-in-1s, beginner chainmail tutorial also if you need help with that. So I've got my 4-in-1s and my open rings, and that's all I need to get started here. Now that I have all of these connected, this is about half of my waist. Again, there will be a little bit of extra wiggle room on the sides because these will go on the ends, but this is half of the belt so far. Now we are onto the scales. I am going to insert a diagram so that you can see the exact pattern that I follow to make this shape. But essentially what we're doing to start is alternating rows of 11 and 12 scales. So you can see on this finished side, here's our belt, and then I've got 11 scales that are directly attached to the belt, and then we go out to 12, back into 11, 12, 11, 12, 11, 12, 11. So we're going to do that alternating for this whole section here. And then once we have that section built out, we sort of get into, you know, a little bit more of a fancy pattern shape. So again, we'll have a diagram on the screen so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But let's get started on this first row. Because all of our belt lengths are going to be different because we're different sizes, you just need to find the midpoint of this belt, and then that's where we're gonna mark off, and that'll be, so we know that we're starting evenly and working from the outside. So let me find the midpoint here. My first row of scales set out, so I'm gonna have 11 scales. This is my midpoint right here. Oh, with my midpoint marked out on my belt, I'm just going to take this same ring that I have marking it off, and I'm going to connect that ring onto there. And again, we're working from the back side of the project, so this is the back of the scales. I also just want to mention, so this is kind of the default way that scale mail is made, with like the top as the top, and it's a very smooth scale, but I did a small section because I wanted to throw out the alternative of when you do the scales upside down, technically, it creates a lot more of like this spiky effect. So you can see how much more lifted the scales are as compared to like doing it the standard way. So this is totally an option for making this, you know, these hip pieces, is to do the scales upside down, and then you get a very like dragon scaly kind of lifted, more three-dimensional effect. So that could also be a really cool way to do these. So I thought I would throw that out there. Because obviously there are a lot more rings than there are scales, we're going to be connecting to every third scale, and that just gets the spacing correct throughout the whole project. So we've got this one in the middle. We're gonna go left first, so hook your scale on, and then we're gonna go 1, 2, and then hook on to the third ring away. I'm gonna do that for all of these. We're hooked onto this one, 1, 2, 3. Going on to that one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm gonna continue doing that and get this whole first row spaced out. I do have a few rings left over on either side. That's totally okay. You can see that they're nice and spaced out, and that will allow for us to work straight down without it creating any bunching on the belt line. On to my second row. I like to sort of put everything down and just get myself organized before I start every row, and that makes sure that I don't like skip anything. And if I have any extra scales, I know that I've messed up somewhere. So I count out my scales and I place them down, and that just helps me get ready for every row that I work with. Again, if this is your first scale mail project, please watch my beginner tutorial, because I'm not going to show you the exact intricacies of like how to attach the scales. So we're just going to move right into attaching this row of 12 onto our row of 11. Just added my second row, so I'm going to straighten my scales out and get that newest row placed on top so that we know exactly what we're working from when we get to the next row. We're going to do this exact same sequence of 11 and 12 5 more times. So there's kind of a big chunk here right at the top where it's just kind of like a dense brick of this 11 to 12 alternating. So I'm just gonna sort of time lapse through that. Okay, my camera died while I was filming that, but I just finished this section that I was talking about, that alternating 11, 12 section. So you should be ending on a row of 12. And if you're sort of like, oh, I can't keep track, like where am I at the same spot as you? I keep track by the amount of rings just like on the side, because we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 going down. And that's how you know you're at the end of like this first stage of the process. So if you have 11 rings right in parallel row with each other, then you're at the right spot. And we're gonna move on to like the next step of this. Essentially what we're doing is creating a gradual taper. I mean, this will eventually go down to a full point, but we're going to kind of create a gradual taper. So to do that, we are actually going to do one more row of 11. I know that's confusing because I was like, stop, but do another one, whatever. What we're going to do now is we're going to do the 11, 10, 11, and then we'll go down to the next section. So let's just quickly do that 11, 10, 11, and then we'll go to the next section. To do another step in that's going to be a 10, 9, 10. That finishes our 10, 9, 10 step in, and now we are going to do another one of 9, 8, 9. Last section, we're going to do 8, 7, 8, 7. So we're doing 4 rows instead of 3 this time. That finishes our 8, 7, 8, 7 block. Now, if you're going for the sort of squared off look, which I think looks nice on the hips, this is a really good place to stop. So if you're stopping here, then yeah, you're done. You just need to make one more of these, and that's that's finishing this side of it. But if you like the pointed look, if you're wearing it on the fronts, or if you just like that look, we are now going to just do a straight taper all the way to a point. So if you're ending on this row of 7, now we're just going to do 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yay, we did it. Okay, so that's how you do this full piece. And of course, you will need to do it twice to have a full hip piece, but this is what it should look like when it's all finished. Another note I will make is about finishing the edges, which is 100% not mandatory, but I'll cover just like briefly how to do it in case that's something you're interested in doing. When I talk about finishing the edges, this is something that a lot of makers do when they do scale mail. I personally don't very often, I don't really ever finish my edges because it just doesn't bother me. But so on this first piece that I did, you can see the difference on this side versus this side. So on this right side, I did finish all the edges, and you can see it just sort of lays a little bit tighter, especially you can see it here, like all of the scales run very sharply in line, and down here as well. That just sort of keeps it all a bit tighter, whereas on this side, the unfinished side, the scales sort of can freely splay out to the sides, and they're just not as locked in as these ones are. So it's completely an aesthetic choice. Like I said, having it unfinished does not bother me, especially when it's on. You can't really tell, but if you like that really crisp edge, this is something that you can do. So I will show you just quickly how that is done. If you want to finish your edges, you're going to start by you're going to need more open rings. And I'm going to, just on this first scale, this first one that's sort of hanging out on the edge here, the first row of 12, I'm going to put this ring just loosely in the hole of this scale right on the edge. I'm going to do one in this first top scale, but then going down, I'm going to put these loose rings. I'm going to put 2 in the rest going down on this section. Another one just kind of chilling in there. So it looks a little strange just to have loose rings there, but that's what you're gonna do. Let's do that all the way down on this section. So when you get these sort of flattened out, what this is essentially doing is creating another row, another vertical row of rings that is creating a 4-in-1 that we can loop another ring through. In the same way that this 4-in-1, you can see it sort of laying in the same direction. We're just gonna take that idea and we're going to do that with these new rings that are present. You can see how they look all the same as the ones already running through. So what I'm gonna do is take open ring, and I'm just going to weave through these 4 rings like I would a 4-in-1 pattern, just the same way. And I'm gonna close that up. And that kind of starts to lock this edge ring in. So let me do a few more just so you can see. I'm just gonna go down to this next available one, down through it, down through that one, swinging over and picking up these two on the left. Again, if you know how to connect two 4-in-1s, it's the same exact pattern. It's just a little harder to show with the scales and everything going on. You just keep them in line so that all of your rings are still running parallel to each other. It's finished off this whole big first section. You're doing these sort of step, like they're kind of straight, but they're sort of curving in. It's the same concept, you know, you're just putting your extra ring on your outermost scale, putting that on this, you know, whatever section you're working on. So this one gets one as well. And then these two get connected together. The two that we just put on, they create their own new set, 4-in-1s to loop together. All right, it gets a little bit different when we hit this like straight, you know, edge that's going down into a point. So instead of doing 2 rings on all of these outermost scales, we're just gonna do 1. Okay, now that you have your extra ring on all of these edges, so since it's, you know, a diagonal curve, we're not going to be going through 4 rings that we're connecting. We're just going to be going through the outermost 3 rings. Starting at this edge here, I'm going to go through the most edge ring and then just up through these 2 next to it. That is the ring. This one right here is the one that we just inserted. So now we're gonna group these 3 together. Starting right here, going down through this one. Right, we got that hooked, and then just up through these 2 next to it. I do also just want to reiterate that this step is so not necessary. This is just something that people have asked me about before. So it is an option on any scale mail project, but again, I literally never do this on any of my scale mail. I just wanted to do a little demonstration for anyone who really likes those crisp lines and, you know, wanted to learn how to lock in your edges on scale mail. So there's the fully locked in edge versus the unlocked. So if you choose to do that, you know, best to do it all the way around. I just wanted to show you the difference. Here it is from the front. This is the locked in edge. And this is the unlocked edge. We just have like a little bit more wiggle room to sort of move freely about, whereas this side is kind of going to keep that hard edge the whole time. You can really see it on the top here too. So this is our locked edge, which is a lot straighter, and this side is a little bit more willy-nilly. But again, like when it's on, you really don't notice it that much. So I just wanted to show you the difference. We are definitely on the home stretch. Once you've made your second piece, all we have to do is connect them now. So between the 2 panels, we're gonna insert our O-ring. So I'm just gonna take these last 2 rings that are on, you know, at the very edge of the belt. I'm gonna open those up and just sort of put the O-ring in those rings. Do that one more time, but just on one side. So it doesn't matter which side. That's your second O-ring installed. You're going to want to put 2 rings that are sort of independently floating on there because this is what your clasp is going to clasp onto. Quick 2 rings dangling there. And the last thing we need to do is go all the way over to your last free edge. And this is where we are going to install our clasp, which is really easy. Just open it up and get those last 2 rings in it like that. Okay, so now we'll just open the clasp and hook onto these loose rings. So you now have a full complete belt. And that is it for the full scale belt piece.